everything can change in a matter of seconds. I mean it. The National Football League is an incredibly unforgiving landscape where legacies are forged and lifelong dreams are permanently dismantled, sometimes on the very same blade of grass. Right now, the brutal July heat is radiating off the turf in Renton. The violent, rhythmic crack of shoulder pads is echoing across Lake Washington. And behind the closed doors of the Virginia Mason Athletic Center, the 2026 Seattle Seahawks are in the lab, engineering a massive, massive transformation. We are looking at a high-stakes reality here. We're talking about an environment where a single practice rep, one collision in full pads, can completely alter the entire trajectory of a franchise. And amidst those brutal collisions and that searing heat of training camp, a massive strategic shift is brewing. The defining question echoing through the entire Pacific Northwest right now is this: who is the Seahawks' next offensive weapon? Look, we all know the established stars, right? The household names that absolutely command a defense's attention. But look at Seattle's historical offensive identity for a second. For years, they leaned on this punishing, grueling ground game mixed with deep, calculated perimeter shots. But the modern NFC West, it's a relentless arms race. To survive against the defensive masterminds in this division, you just cannot simply run the ball into a brick wall and pray for a breakthrough anymore. You need dynamic, unpredictable firepower. Something completely new is happening with this offense, and it is happening right this second. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll break down the Shaheed X factor. Second, we're looking at rookies on the rise. Third, those crucial secondary depth chart battles. And finally, rookies losing ground. Section 1. The Shaheed X factor. Activating the Deebo vibes. So, the Seahawks are entering year 2 of the Rashid Shaheed experiment, and the strategy inside the building is aggressively shifting. Listen to this closely because this is huge. According to insider reports from Albert Breer, the buzz inside the facility is just deafening. The quote literally reads, "Seahawks have big plans. The whole situation gives off Deebo Samuel-type vibes." Think about the absolute gravity of that comparison for a moment. Deebo Samuel is a positionless nightmare for defensive coordinators. He breaks the traditional rules of football geometry. Picture it. Shaheed motions from the slot, directly into the backfield right before the snap. The opposing middle linebacker suddenly has to make a genuinely impossible choice. Do I stay home in the trenches to defend the inside run, or do I sprint to the edge to chase a guy with world-class track star speed? Transitioning a player who was utilized mostly as a return specialist last year into a heavily featured Swiss Army knife centerpiece, that is a monumental undertaking. And if they pull it off, it will force defenses into personnel mismatches they simply cannot win. Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast in his 2025 production, which perfectly illustrates his untapped receiving potential. During his first 9 games of 2025 with the New Orleans Saints, he racked up nearly 500 receiving yards. He was on fire. But then, in his final 9 games after the trade to the Seahawks, he posted fewer than 200 yards. So you have to ask, why the massive drop-off? Well, the Saints utilized him strictly as a deep threat, just launching the ball downfield and letting him run underneath it. When he arrived in Seattle mid-season, the coaching staff smartly kept the training wheels on. They didn't strictly need him to learn the entire encyclopedic route tree overnight. They relied heavily on his elite special teams prowess while he learned the incredibly complex playbook in the background. But guys, that developmental phase is officially over. The foundation has been meticulously laid, and the opportunity is now wide open for him to reclaim and honestly completely shatter that original 500-yard pace. And here is the exact strategic reason why Shaheed is primed for an absolute explosion. Number 1, Jackson Smith-Njigba is the undisputed number 1 option on this offense. He is the reigning Offensive Player of the Year. He demands double coverage on literally every single snap. Historically, to stop a player of that caliber, defensive coordinators have to roll a safety over the top. They bracket him, dedicating 2 sets of eyes and 2 bodies to him at all times. But here's the catch. When a defense is forced to do that to survive, they leave a massive, glaring void on the backside of the formation. That is the exact, perfect ecosystem where a speedster like Shaheed thrives. When you isolate his sub-4.4 speed in single coverage against a cornerback who has 0 safety help, standard defensive adjustments become completely obsolete. One wrong step, one slight hesitation by a defensive back, and it's an instantaneous touchdown. Section 2. Rookies on the rise, the blue chip additions. An NFL roster is a highly fragile ecosystem. While the established core, the superstars, prepare for prime time, the periphery of the roster is an absolute cutthroat dogfight. In the NFL, rookie stock is never, ever standing still. You are either rising, you're falling, or you are desperately trying to fight your way out of the murky middle. The margins for error evaporate by the second during this first full week of padded practices. On one side of the coin, we have Jadarian Price, Emmanuel Henderson Jr., and Michael Dansby, whose stock is absolutely soaring. In the middle, Julian Neal and Andre Fuller are holding their breath, waiting for a spark, and on the other tragic end, Bud Clark, Bo Stevens, and Devin Eastern are watching their opportunities slowly slip away. Let's break down exactly why these seismic shifts are happening right now in camp. Let's zoom in on the risers first. Running back Jadarian Price isn't just surviving the rookie wall, he is thriving. Now, earning a first-team rep isn't just a small moral victory. It means you are trusted to catch passes from the franchise quarterback while staring down starting all-pro linebackers, not practice squad guys who'll be selling insurance in 3 weeks. He is seizing these reps over established veterans. But the absolute key detail here is how offensive coordinator Brian Fleury is molding him. Fleury knows Price can run between the tackles, that's a given, but he is specifically prioritizing Price's development in the passing game. Fleury is designing complex Texas routes over the middle and forcing Price to track the football over his shoulder on deep wheel routes in live action. That versatility is the golden ticket in today's NFL. Meanwhile, wide receiver Emmanuel Henderson Jr. is flashing elite breakaway speed and incredibly reliable hands, proving day in and day out that he can hang with the veterans who've been entrenched in the system for years. Then you take a guy like cornerback Michael Dansby. Spring organized team activities, OTAs as we call them, they are one thing. Honestly, everyone looks fast and athletic running around in a helmet and shorts. But full pads, that is an entirely different beast. The collisions are real. The sheer physical fear of getting blown up on a blocking assignment is real. Dansby, a late-round rookie, is stepping up to the plate when the violence escalates. He's accounted for multiple interceptions in one-on-one and team drills against the first-team offense. You don't just luck into that. Furthermore, he's making himself absolutely indispensable by flying down the field like a heat-seeking missile on special teams coverage. When an analyst like Corbin Smith names you one of his favorite rookies of the entire offseason, you aren't just a camp body anymore. You are a legitimate, terrifying threat to steal a veteran's job. This really reveals the razor-thin margin for error in the NFL. Elite speed, seizing first-team reps, forcing turnovers in live drills. That is how momentum builds into an unstoppable force during a suffocating training camp. But the absolute hurdles that can collapse a career before it even begins are equally stark, if not more so. Being relegated to third-team reps starves a young player of crucial game tape. And then there is the physically unable to perform, or PUP list. To a casual fan, it's just an injury designation. Inside the building, it is a developmental death sentence for a fringe player. It is the brutal, heartbreaking irony of professional football. A slightly sprained ankle in early August strips you of 50 practice reps and can quite literally cost a player a $1 million career. Section 3. Secondary Depth Chart Battles. The Murky Middle. These are the players who are holding steady, doing exactly what is asked of them, but they desperately need a singular breakout moment to secure their legacy before the clock completely runs out. Take cornerbacks Julian Neal and Andre Fuller. Neal is handling himself relatively well with the second-team defense, but those nagging, minor injuries are severely limiting his availability when he needs it most. In his way stands Josh Jobe and third-year veteran Nehemiah Pritchett, who is fiercely stepping up while starting slot corner Nick Emamori is out. Fuller, on the other hand, was rock solid in spring OTAs, but since the pads have come on and the hitting started, those loud, attention-grabbing plays have completely vanished. If Fuller doesn't secure a massive pass breakup or an interception by Saturday's scrimmage, he essentially becomes invisible to the coaching staff. The psychological toll here is just devastating. You go from being a Saturday college superstar where everyone on campus knows your name to fighting for practice squad scraps on a Tuesday afternoon. In this league, quiet competence often just gets you cut. The source material for today notes this really poignant quote. It is okay for a young player to need extra time to get to the NFL level. It's a sentiment filled with a lot of empathy. But let's look at the cold, hard, unfeeling business side of the National Football League for a second. The regular season simply does not wait for your potential to actualize. General managers have to field a fully competitive, bulletproof 53-man roster immediately just to keep their own job safe. Cutdown day is a cold corporate transaction. The unforgiving reality is that long-term potential, without immediate, undeniable on-field production in August, is a one-way ticket off the depth chart. Section 4. Rookies Losing Ground. The Bubble Watch. The stakes could not possibly be higher right now, and for these specific players, the walls are rapidly closing in. But remember, this isn't over yet. Let's track the chronological, agonizing uphill battle of Devin Eastern. Drafted in the late rounds in the spring, he was already facing incredibly long odds just to make the 16-man practice squad. Then, early camp hits, and he is placed on the PUP list, missing absolutely vital playbook install days. But Thursday finally marked his first full pads practice. And here is exactly where fate intervenes. Defensive tackle Brandon Peely has suffered an injury. Suddenly, a tiny window of opportunity has cracked open. But it's open today, right now. Eastern must climb through it immediately. Think about the immense, suffocating pressure of that single practice rep this afternoon. If he gets bullied by a starting guard on a run block today, the coaching staff will write him off forever. It happens exactly that fast. And for others, the cascading consequences of missing out on first-team reps are practically burying them alive. Safety Bud Clark is marooned on the second and third-team defense. Now, he was never expected to usurp a guy like Julian Love, but now he is completely blocked by young, hungry veterans like D'Anthony Bell and Rodney Thomas, who are violently seizing the moment. Similarly, fifth-round offensive lineman Bo Stevens is struggling mightily with the third-team offense. Fans really expected him to challenge for Anthony Bradford's spot, but why is a fifth-round pick failing right now? It's not muscle, it's the processing speed. It's the sheer, mind-bending complexity of NFL defensive blocking schemes. Stevens is struggling to recognize the exotic stunts and twists that veteran edge rushers are throwing at him pre-snap. The physical jump from college is incredibly hard, but the mental jump, that is what gets you cut. Everything we have discussed today, the explosive offensive schemes, the stunning interceptions, the devastating minor injuries, the intense depth chart battles, it all inevitably, unceremoniously collides with this brutal number, 53. 53 active roster spots. It is not just a number, it is a cold, calculated math equation that ends lifelong dreams. Right now, there are 90 guys sweating, bleeding, and colliding on that practice field in Renton, doing everything humanly possible to prove their worth to this franchise. But the math is absolute. By the end of the month, 37 of those men will be handed a black trash bag for their locker and asked to turn in their playbook tablet. Dreams will permanently end when this roster is finalized. Which leaves us with the ultimate lingering unanswered question. Who actually survives the final cut? How will these granular, incredibly intense micro-battles in the trenches ultimately shape the ceiling of the 2026 Seattle Seahawks? Because make no mistake, these bubble battles dictate the future of the entire franchise. The difference between a devastating wildcard exit and a parade in February often comes down to the 52nd and 53rd men on the roster, stepping up when the injuries inevitably pile up in the freezing cold of December. Will the Deebo Samuel-style deployment of Rashid Shaheed be the final devastating piece of a championship puzzle? Or will injuries and rookie growing pains completely derail the master plan before week 1 even kicks off? That is the beauty and the sheer, unadulterated brutality of an NFL training camp. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. If you want to stay ahead of every single roster move, every wild scheme shift, and every single depth chart battle, you need to subscribe to NFL Nexus right now. Hit the like button on this explainer, drop your own 53-man roster predictions down in the comments below, and support the deep dive work we do by becoming a channel member today. The clock is ticking on training camp, and the margin for error is absolutely zero. Stay tuned to NFL Nexus. We'll be watching.